chat number 9. That's Nurjahan playing in the background for us today. It's a Pehli Mohabbat. It's a classic, you can't go wrong. I am going to turn it down as usual because I can't hear myself. Today is going to be an interesting session. We have had, Assalamu alaikum again, we've had some requests over the last few chats that we should go back and look at the ancient maps again. So, welcome back to all of those people, all of those friends, all the members of the Cube Editor community who have been kind enough to show an interest, to send me DMs, to send me WhatsApps, and say that we really want to look at the ancient maps and understand them better. So today we're going to be looking at more detailed maps, and I'm going to explain to you the reason why maps are really important. You know, we've already talked about the need for tourism infrastructure, we've talked about how to approach heritage architecture, the value of these buildings, how to be able to see them in their clothing, to be able to smell them, to be able to really appreciate them at a very sensual, emotional, almost spiritual level. So we've talked about these things, and we can always come back. The last two sessions, for those who are joining us today, you know that we've looked at stories. I shared hilarious set of stories from our lorry pass crossing across the lorry top a few days ago. We've talked about a hilarious incident at Nagar Pakar in Thar, and we've talked about Sevan Sharif. So today's format is a little bit different. You can see that I'm not in my chair. I'm going to be able to move around and talk and be slightly more active because I want to really get into those maps. And in fact, this might be a little bit more dynamic and potentially disruptive because I will pick up the camera and I'll move it closer to the maps when we start talking about them. So we're going to, in general, format-wise, shift between stories and academia, between stories and technical stuff. So I want you all to bear with me and enjoy the process. Come back with questions, with feedback, with criticisms, with things that you're genuinely interested in that you'd like me to get into. I've had polls put out, and today's interest for a lot of people has been the ancient maps and understanding the role that maps play in our deconstruction of a contemporary cultural identity. Who are we as Pakistanis? What is Pakistaniyat? Where have we come from? Why does any of this matter? All the people who are in the community, who are photographers, who go out and they travel across the country and they look at these buildings and they take incredible photos of these buildings. This would be a great session for all of you to understand what's happening behind that building and the eras that it's come through for it to be that final piece that you see, that final icing on the cake, that final lick of chocolate at the end of the bowl at 3 in the morning when you're trying to really get to the bottom of something that's truly delicious. So this is the ancient maps. I'm hoping is today's talk, today's chat is going to be a really useful one for not only just our friends and people who've been on the editors with me, but also for new members in the community who have joined us recently. We have Ravi, who is connecting every so often from Washington. We have Ritik from across the border. Of course, there's Saira from New York, and the usual other community members across Pakistan, from Islamabad and Lahore, and Sharjah, Dubai, of course, in the Gulf, and Melbourne, and Singapore. So thank you all once again. Welcome back. I hope everyone is safe and secure under lockdown and quarantine conditions and making the most of this time. Let's get closer to the maps. So first of all, I'm going to show you, there've been a change in the maps, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear me when I move this far back. If you can't, let me know, but I think the sound should be okay. So the first set of maps I want to look at is where are we, right? You start from where you're at, and then we go backwards. And we generally want to engulf 3,000, 4,000 years of history and traverse from the eastern end of Europe all the way to the western end of China, from southern Siberia all the way to the Indian Ocean. That is our context for understanding movement of civilizations, shifting of empires, creating of culture, construction of identity, sharing of ideas through trade. So that's really what these maps are all about. And we will gradually, I will walk you through them, and we will gradually see what it's all about. So the hat, my classic signature fedora, for those who have seen it before, it's been sitting on the side. For anyone who's been on tours with me, this is a signature element. It does kind of defy the rest of the outfit, but it's been with me for many, many years, and it's falling apart. I do need to replace it, but I thought that if I'm out and about and I'm doing my Indiana Jones act through the maps, then it'd be quite nice to even have the hat on. It makes me feel like I'm on an edu tour. I'm conducting a pop-up classroom, which we do on many of our sites. We've seen it recently in Bahawalpur. Those of you who've been with me to Ranikoot, you've seen it there. So it just gets me into the mood. So where are we? We're in Sindh. And I dug out this map to show you that Sindh, here is a wonderful, wonderful map that's been created by the Sindh Tourism Board. Several years ago, I got my hands on it because I looked at it and it was just phenomenal. So I thought, this is amazing. And this is where we start. We start with the province of Sindh, and then we will gradually go into the maps at the back. I want you to see that Sindh, even in this map that has most of its heritage sites marked, Sindh actually has 200 heritage sites. And for us to be able to go through all of them is an elaborate, time-consuming process. It can be done. Many, many of these places are not easily accessible. Many of them we've been to. Any of the folks who've been with me on edu tours before have commented multiple times that we didn't know these places existed, we wouldn't know how to get here, and had you not done the due diligence and the research in the background to get us here, to navigate, to get the information on how to access these places, how to unlock gates, doors, let us in, find the local chowkidars, find the local custodians and the caretakers, we would never know this incredible pieces of history even exist in Sindh. In fact, you'll be interested to know, yesterday there was a friend of mine who's an architect, lives in Lahore, works in the walled city, a fantastic setup that Kamran Lashari Saab has done at the Lahore Fort, said that my God, Zain, I had no idea that Sindh had so much history. So, this is very typical that we don't know, but that's okay. I mean, there's always time to find out, and this right now is a great time to find out what we have, and more importantly, where it came from. Sindh has probably the richest history in the 4-5 provinces, and there's a lot of this region that was controlled and ruled through the southern Sindh area, across the border and up to southern Punjab, through the princely states of Khairpur, up to the princely states of Bahawalpur. So Sindh is loaded, absolutely loaded in history. So this is the first thing, and I'm going to just quickly take you closer to the Sindh map so that you can get a better idea of what we're talking about. And this is what I'll do today. So this is the map of Sindh, and hi Najiba, hi Auntie, Shaheen. Here are all the different sites that have been earmarked. Faizan, amazing photos. Thank you for joining us, man. Really, really nice. Here is, so let's start with what we talked about. Here is the shrine of Sachal Sarma. So those who've been with me to Khairpur, we were here. Here is, of course, Mohenjo-daro, marked right there. Across from that, there is the great Mohenjo-daro. The Khairpur Meers are in this area. That's also northern Sindh. We've done all of that. Southern Punjab starts here. John Jacob's grave and Victoria Tower at this end. That's Jacobabad. And then we go across into Balochistan. As we come down south, for those of you who have been with me, here is a sign for Ranikoot Fort right there. And we come down south, you'll see Abdullah Shah, all of the Clifton. This is Karachi here. For those of us that want to know what's happening in this neighborhood, here's Karachi, here are our ports. Right, we go across the ports. Here's Shah Jahan Mosque, so there's Thatta. For all of those who are involved these days in the Shah Jahan Mosque geometry classes, this would be of use to you to actually go there and do the classes there. And then we come across, so if I'm not mistaken, here is Makli, and then next to it will be the Shah Jahan Mosque, which is right there. This is all driving distance from Karachi. It's literally like an hour and a half maximum. And then we come across into Thar. Here is Umarkot Fort. Here is Mithi down south. Here is Nagarpakar, the Kaspo temple. This is the Indian border and the Run of Kutch on this side. This is Nagarpakar, and this is really important, this region. We talked about the Nagarpakar story the other day. The Bodhisar Jain temple, Nagarpakar, Diplo, Naukot Fort is here, which we talked about. So in terms of edutors, some of you have been with me all the way to this edge. This is the Indian border on this side, all along this edge. This is the Indian border. So when we come to Nagarpakar, we're right at that very edge. And from Nagarpakar, of course, you can do all of Sindh with us, which we have done. All of this we've done. We've done Jacobabad and the northern areas. We've done Khairpur, Mohenjo-daro, all of that. Shikarpur. Then you come down here. We've done Ranikot in this area. And then, of course, all of Thar and Nagarpakar. And then from here, we go all the way to the other end, to the very, very top, which is the Kailash. And this is our intro to Sindh, to give you an idea of where we are, because a lot of times people get stuck with trying to figure out their basic geography of where they are in Sindh. Now, I will come and bring us back to not only Sindh, but what is it that we look at? So here we are in Sindh. So what? The big question that we always want to answer is, so what? Why does any of this matter? Why do these locations matter? Because all of these locations, all of these people who settled here, who built their temples, who built their shrines, who stayed behind, who lived here in those locations, they loved, they died. These are places that were all selected not always for their spiritual value, but also for access to water, good agriculture, being able to grow one's own food, to sell the food, to earn a living, to be able to use the water to transfer the food north, transfer the food south. If you're being able to transfer food either by land or by the river, which would be the river Indus, we're back to the great river Sindhu, and this area which is Sindhustan, and became from the river Sindhu to river Indus, to the landmass that was called India, and then of course it stretched out and became today's India. But really this river is what identified that area that was called India. So that river has not only always provided a great transportation channel for sending grains and rice and other such food items, fruits and vegetables up and down, but also trade, right? So they're trading with other materials, silks, fabrics, ornamentation, decoration, construction material. So the geography plays a huge role, and the geography must be understood in all of these maps. Why were these places picked? Climate, landscape, fertility, mountains for protection, water to drink, water for the livestock, water for agriculture, water to live with, right? General water for life. So all of these elements come together and play a role in many of the settlements that we find up and down the entire river Indus. For instance, the Indus Valley civilization, we know of how many cities? 3, 4, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Taxila, and Mehergarh. That's just 4. Actually, there's over 100 towns, pre-Harappan, Harappan, post-Harappan, of the Indus Valley civilization dotted on either side like a butterfly, on either side of the river Indus. So all of these people were not just settling and establishing empires, establishing governments, establishing systems of life, establishing cities, urban centers. Not just randomly. They had figured out that this is going to be the best geography for us. This is going to be the best area for us to live over centuries, and in the Indus Valley civilization's case, they lived for millennia. So of course, then you go back to 5,000 years and say, okay, if rivers play a role, what other rivers have played a role? Of course, the Tigris and Euphrates. So we look at Mesopotamia, and then there's the Nile, and you look at Egypt. So these were all siblings. We then start understanding cultures and civilizations with a connection through geography, time, and then seeing what they were doing in terms of similarities between them. So they become siblings, they become peers, they become cousins to one another, and we start doing the analysis and the deconstruction of the ancient civilization. So this next map is one you may have seen before, but we haven't talked about. So what happens in this map, I'm going to first show you the general large screen, and then I'll bring the camera closer so we can all take a better look. Right, we're going to look at the value of maps all the way from, here's Cappadocia, so there is Turkey, there is Italy, here's the Aegean Sea. And you come across from the eastern end of Europe, come across the Persian states and the Arab states, and you come to this area. This is us right here. There's a river Indus, and this is a map. Important for us to look at the dates on these maps. This map is 180. If it's 180, then we're looking at a map that's potentially 2,000 years old. Now that is an ancient map. So for anybody who thought that the maps we would be looking at would be just the Mughal maps, the Mughal maps are modern, and they really are the tail end. The Mughal maps, very modern, very much last minute in terms of 11th hour, in terms of our age today. Colonial British maps, we all think that Karachi's greatness is its colonial history and Lahore's magic is its Mughal history, but really that's just the tip of the iceberg. Karachi has an ancient history, Lahore has an ancient history, and to just kind of limit them in this myopic point of view and say that that's really all these two cities have to offer is unfortunate. Karachi has a much richer, much deeper history in terms of its ancient footprint here. And so does Lahore. What we see is the colonial stuff. But please, for all of you who are out there wandering around these cities, do ask yourselves, what came before? What came in Karachi before the colonial history that we have that's all Old Town, and the same with the Old Town of Lahore. So we're looking at what happens and what were the impetus, the driving forces, the energy that brought people through these places for the last 4,000 years repeatedly. These are not flash in the pan events or incidences that happened just once and then they died out. People keep coming back. They kept building on those layers. There are layers underneath each of our existing cities. And then there are layers in cities that have disappeared. They've disappeared because a river changed its route. The climate has obviously changed. In our lifetime, we've experienced climate change. So in 4,000 years, in 5,000 years, climate has obviously changed as well. So this is a really interesting map to be able to say that, okay, 2,000 years ago, we didn't have the present political boundaries as we see them. It was all about the geography, the rivers, the mountains, and how people were moving from east to west, from west to east, what they were taking with them, what they were trading, and whether the routes were dependent on access through mountains, or the routes were dependent on access to rivers through the mountains that would take their material from point A to point B. What would be the easiest? And if you look at this map, it gives you a breakdown of all the different people at different locations. But if you look at the different types of tribes, we see the term tribes. The term tribes shows up. They were all nomads. They picked up their entire peoples and they moved. They moved on camelback. They moved on horseback. Every so often there were settlements, but sometimes those settlements didn't leave any trace of their footprint, of their carbon footprint, what these people were like. Many a times in civilizations where we found burial grounds or we found mummies, we've been able to understand those people based on how they would bury their dead. And that's been a really great way of carbon footprinting those people that may have been nomadic for most of their lives, but at some point said, this is a great location to be, let's leave some people here, let's create a settlement, let's create an urbanity and live here for a while. Those people, when they leave, there are either homes, or there's grains, or there's pottery, there's ceramics, or there's mummies that we can use to understand who these people were. There's jewelry for instance, in Taxila, that looks like Greek jewelry, that looks like jewelry that comes from Southeast Asia. So how does that happen? How is it that somebody who's living in Taxila, who's beating and heating and melting gold or silver, is creating these forms, these shapes, these silhouettes, whether it's for anklets or it's for bracelets or it's for necklaces? Where are these ideas coming from? Are we to assume that these ideas are coming just as boomf? So visions, one fine night in dreams and the next day, no. They're obviously shared ideas. And the sharing of these ideas is all connected to how one moves from point A to point B, how those traders can function, how are they actually getting places without damaging their goods, without losing their lives, without losing their animals. So once we look at the success rate of the trade routes, the success rate of those trade routes, and a repeating success rate of that trade route is dependent on the geography. Excellent climate, not too many uncomfortable mountains to climb over, great places to rest, great places to get water, great little towns to make friends, have some food, and that's how our Silk Route developed. So all of these develop as these organic, amorphous environments on repeat. The more one comes back to it, the more logical sense it makes. So this map is really for us to look at this line right through the center of the Asian continent. And through that line, you then see where Pakistan lies. Today's Pakistan, the Indus River, is right in the middle. So, although the river runs like this, if we were to roughly say, this is the eastern boundary of Europe, here is the Bosphorus, and you come across, and here is the eastern boundary, and here's the Far East. So between these two, almost in the middle, bang in the center, is the river Indus, and right above the river Indus are the Central Asian countries, which is the people who gave birth to the Silk Route. And this route that brought goods from Turkey all the way to China, at least up to the Mongol edge, before which people will be pushed back, and how the Siberian people, here they are, how the Siberian people and their tribes stuck up in the north amongst tons and tons of snow and terrible weather. Their southern states wanted warmth, they wanted a place to grow food, they wanted a place for the livestock to live. And their interest in coming down and the access to the warm water, that would allow people all these areas of trade if you could access that, which is today's Karachi and Katy Bandar and Gwadar. So let me just get you a little bit closer to that so you can see what it is that we're talking about. Right? Lamia, great to see you. Here we are. So we look at that initial movement, as I said. Here is Cappadocia, right? Here's present-day Armenia. That was Armenia back then also. And then we come across, here are these mountains. We come across, here are the Himalayas. All of these, there's Nepal. So there is Nepal, there is Everest. Here is Kashmir. Here are Karakoram, Hindu Kush ranges. Here is the river Indus coming down. On this side will be Kabul. But here we have Chitral and Kailash up in this neighborhood. And here is our eventually becoming Kirthar mountain range that's sitting next to the river over here, right above where it says Indo-Scythians, in fact, would be, underneath the sea, would be the great Ranikot Fort. So the role that these mountains that trail down here, these are the foothills. Here is our access into India. Into Iran. Into Iran and into Afghanistan. There's a lovely little town called Zahedan right here. That is our border through. And of course today's Iran, Afghanistan sit right at the corner. Both of them sit right at the corner of Pakistan. We have China here and we have India on this border. So this geography is really important to see how it's gone all the way. At this time we were looking at the Han dynasty and the Chinese, but you see the Proto-Tibetan tribes, and look at how the landmass that we today call India was distributed in those days. Mathura is here. Mathura was a town that was famous at the time of Taxila. Here is a little pocket left behind of the Indo-Greeks, and the large mass that was used by the Indo-Scythians. The Scythians were a Russian Siberian empire that was pushed back by the Mongols and came and settled in this neighborhood at this time, which means they had already started their journey maybe 500 years before coming down into this neighborhood. So this is a wonderful map to be able to understand this x-axis that takes you across from west to east, and then the y-axis that takes us from Siberia south all the way through the river Indus, right here she is, into the Arabian Ocean and to all the seafaring trade routes. So that would be one map for us to be able to analyze and look at. Let me just place this back here so that we can talk about this in slightly greater detail. Let's look at another map. So I'll go back here. Very important. Look at the date on this and look at the materials shown. All these nomadic types. Here, of course, we also see the Parthian Empire. So the Parthians came across, and at some point we also had the Indo-Parthians here, not at this time, but later. This map follows from the one before. So it doesn't show the geography as much, but if we've understood the geography from the previous map in terms of open areas, rivers, mountains, deserts, then you will see that the Scythians, here is Italy, they were coming across, the Scythians came across, pushed the Sarmatians back, the Chinese, the Kushans also came across. In fact, we have Kushan history here. Here is Pakistan, here is the edge of India, the Hindu kingdoms and republics. Here are the Tibetans. This is a very crunchy map. And the Kushans were the history that we have in Chitral. So the Kushan history in Chitral gets mixed with the Greek history, and we get the Kalash. And the Greeks actually have created a fantastic museum in the Kalash because they believe that a lot of the Kalash culture is connected to them. We talked about this also in one of our previous chats. So then we start looking at the movement of these civilizations, these empires. This is all of your frozen Siberia, Paleo-Siberian hunter-gatherers. Here were again the hunter-gatherers. We have to also understand a big difference between those that were agriculturists and those that were hunter-gatherers. And the fact that the hunter-gatherers were nomads. The people who settled were those that needed land. They needed real estate. They needed real estate to own. They needed property to grow wheat, to grow rice, to grow fruits, to grow things. The hunter-gatherer didn't need that kind of a real estate footprint. But the folks that were growing food, they needed that. They needed to grow food for themselves. They realized that agriculture could be food that they could trade because they were growing en masse. They were growing at a scale that they didn't need to use all that material just for their village. So they could share, they could trade, they could sell. They started buying and selling. So we went from barter to exchange of coins, exchange of wealth, exchange of money. But it was important for them, as opposed to the hunter-gatherers who then lost out because they were hunting, and they were hunting wild animals, and they were eating, and they were selling, and it was done. But our settlers were the other variety, were the agriculturists. They needed the real estate. They were our first early real estate developers. And really important group of people to understand because they stayed put, they took control, they ruled those areas, and that's how the settled empires developed. Not from the hunter-gatherers, but from the ones that settled. So this is an amazing map from my point of view, where we look at the Greek states, we look at the Western Iranics. It was the Iranic empires we talked about earlier. The Arab nations are developing, and they're coming across, and here we are. This is us. Right there. The Sake coming across, and of course the Kushans that we already have history with. This is a map that you've all seen before. So we come down. Now, first we we established the Siberian empires, the Siberian people, we looked at the general geography of this area. We looked at the mountain ranges, the lakes, the rivers, and how the Indus River plays a role. Then we come 500 years later, and you see the Scythians have moved across, and they're being pushed back by the Kushans, and they come south. And here they are. So for those who've seen this map before, here we are. They come and they settle into this neighborhood. I will show you this map up close as well, because it's one of my favorites, and it really ought not to be left out. So those of you who've been with me on the Running Code tour, you will have seen this, but you see there is Mathura again, right? We saw Mathura in a previous map. There she is. There's Taxila. There's Alexandria in the Caucasus. So the Greeks are coming into this neighborhood. Here is, again, so Alexandria mentioned means Greek influence coming through. The Indo-Scythians, so the Scythians who have come from the southern Siberian Empire, they've been pushed down, pushed across by the Mongols. They've come down and they've established themselves here. This map, in fact, is all about the Indo-Scythian kingdom. So these maps are not maps that I've made up. These are maps that are available online, and these are maps that need to be studied. We need to do research. Where is the information on the Indo-Scythian kingdoms in our region? Which museum has it? Which books have it? Who has access to this information? And this is the kind of research that we need to start doing to understand better questions of our identity and our cultural movement, who we are, where we've been, and obviously that's going to give us a direct idea of where we will go next. So while that map falls apart, off its hook. See, here's another wonderful map. Now we've moved from 2,000 years ago. I've taken you through thousands of years. We're now at the 13th century AD. So we're now 1,300 years, 1,400 years after the first map that I showed right in the beginning. And look at this. So here you see directly the connection between, there's Constantinople. This is now in a language that everybody who's on this chat today will understand. So if there's anything from the earlier maps that you may have missed or not got, that's all history that is shared. My history in this region is shared with the Eastern Baltics. My history is shared with the Czech Republic and that region. It's shared by the Turks, shared by the Iranians, by the Phoenicians, by the Greeks. All of our history is shared by all of these people. So we shouldn't be wanting to be isolated and pigeonholed and compartmentalized and saying your history is only worth 200 years, or only worth 300 years, or worse still, is only 70 years or 75 years since Pakistan was created as Pakistan. Our history is this broad brush of all of these people, from the Russians to the Greeks to the Turks to the Chinese to the Kushans that came here. And this is what we need to start discussing, not only internally, but in their countries. They need to start discussing the value of their history and their settlers and their people, their emperors, their warriors that came and settled in this region along the river Indus, which is today's Pakistan. So this is a wonderful map that actually I'm going to take you closer to again, because this is a map that everybody will be able to understand and relate to. Right? This is the Mongol Empire, 1294. So we're looking at 1300, 14th century. So you see there's Alexandria. So Egypt has already been established. Alexandria and Tyre. We see Constantinople, which is modern day Istanbul. There's Moscow and Kiev. Venice. So this is turning around. It's a map that's curved. And interesting enough, here is we come look at the route, right? Let's follow this route. Here is the map. That's the trade route for the Silk Route. There is Samarkand, Central Asia, and here is their outline of the Central Asian Silk Route countries. And then we have the edge of the Chinese Empire. There's Beijing, there's the Gobi Desert, there's Liujiang, Nanjing, which is today's Beijing, Right then, of course, is Korea. So here is that red line that takes us right through the heart of the Silk Route, from the east to the west, and the west back into the middle. And guess where the center is? Right above Kabul, right above the river Indus. How conveniently located is that? Look at this. That here's the river Indus that connects the heart of this silk trade route from the west to the central point, from the east to the central point, and connecting to the Arabian Ocean and all of this golden body of water through the river Indus. This is a fantastic map that really explains that movement and the role that the river Indus has played, and therefore the cultural diversity that we have inherited along the river Indus. From the first map I showed you, pre-Scythians to the Scythians, to the Kushans, to the Indo-Greeks, the Indo-Scythians, the Indo-Parthians, and all the way up to the 13th century. This is before the Mughals then started coming down and establishing themselves here, and then gradually coming across India. Really beautiful and phenomenal map. This one is one of my favorites that explains this Silk Route so clearly. So we'll put this back, and I'm going to show you a couple more before we talk about the next topic. Right, so sorry, we've gone back. What I don't want to spend too much time on, I mean, this map shows, it's marked, it shows the Silk Routes, it shows the Great Wall of China. So now the Great Wall of China has been established many years. It shows the border of the Mongol Empire, and of course it shows all of this great movement from west to east. The other two maps, these are Mughal maps that I will come back to at a later stage. I'm not going to spend too much time on it today because I think this is a different discussion, but it gives you an idea of what was happening, right? So here's the river Indus, here's Thatta, here's Multan, here's Lahore, here's Srinagar, Peshawar, Kabul. Peshawar and Kabul have played an enormous role in our history. We always forget Kabul because in today's political boundaries, it's in Afghanistan, and we forget about it. But Peshawar, Kabul, Lahore, Thatta, these are cities that have played a huge role in the history of this region. And here is the movement of the empire. This is Mughal India under Akbar. So Akbar, who was born in Umarkot and used Umarkot, the fort at Umarkot, as his childhood playground. Then he grew up and he started this expansion of the Mughal Empire from the western end of India, which is Pakistan, all the way across to the eastern end of India, and gradually they started coming down. The other day, a few days back, I was having a discussion with one of our friends online about what are the similarities between the Indian cultures and ours, and how nice it would be to come across. There's a lot of similarities in this northern area belt. There's a lot of similarities because that whole region that Akbar took over, developed, established from Umarkot to the end of Bihar, the other side of Bihar. Here are all the towns in between. There's Fatehpur Sikri, which is magical. There is Agra right there. There's Awadh. So these, Agra right in the middle, Delhi right in the middle. Here's the Thar Desert on our side. See, there's no political boundaries. Today's India is here somewhere. There's Multan. There are the Himalayas, again, across. There's the Khyber Pass. So it's amazing how much geography plays a role in this, where he was able to come right across and start trickling down into the south. There's another map that actually shows, sorry, this is coming apart for today. I think it's basically saying I don't really need to be discussing this any further. I can do this. This shows, sorry, my taping system hasn't worked very well today. What this map shows is, you see the legend, extent to the Mughal Empire in 1530, expansion of the Mughal Empire 1605, 1707, the Mughal expansion into Babur's Afghan kingdom, important, boundary of Suri Empire, and the roots of the Mughal expansion campaigns going back up. So this is a wonderful map that shows the three developments, the northern areas, the central areas, and the southern areas. very, very important map for us to look at when we start studying the movement of the Mughal Empire. If I can salvage some of these maps and come back. This map, of course, is for me the most relevant from all of these maps, unless we go back to, sorry about that, one map that has come down. All the maps were redone today, so they've been in and out of the scotch taping process. Here. This map, for me, is the most relevant map for today. So I think that if we, as I go back, if you look at these maps again carefully, you see the areas where it's flat land, where people can grow food, where there's room for agriculture, and look at the role that our geography in this region has played in terms of providing us with opportunity, providing people, other cultures with opportunity to come here. So our history, when we look at our history, is directly connected to the Persian Empire, directly connected to the Nabateans. The Nabateans are here. This is Jordan, so that's Petra. We're looking at Persian Empire, we're looking at the Turks, we're looking at, here is the Bosphorus apparently up there. There's Thrace, there's Greece. This would be Turkey. We're looking at these countries here, the Black Sea, the Dead Sea, these guys coming across, your southern Russian empires. All of us, our history is connected to all of these people, which means that their history is sitting with us as much as our history is a part of theirs. Their history is a part of ours. And that's a phenomenal space to be exploring and researching and navigating, that how can we create these dialogues with all these different people in these different countries who have established books and museums and libraries for all of their history. And we can use that to fill in the blanks, to fill in the gaps of our history where we don't have the necessary documentation, or we've started that documentation now. For instance, from these dialogues, people on the other side of this camera have shown an interest in doing the documentation, whether it's written or capturing of the stories through film, through drawings, through videos, through photographs. This is a time for us to be discussing our history as a composite, as this large, amorphous, octopus-like creature that actually sits with its head right here, but has tentacles in all of these regions, all this across here, but the brain of it sits here. For 4,000 years, we've had people coming to this point and establishing footprints, carbon footprints, settlements, not just the Indus Valley civilization, but after them. And that is this tremendous history that is multi-pronged and bringing everybody to this intense, lush, rich, geographical state that is what we today call Pakistan. Let me just see if there are questions that people have coming through. If you have questions, feel free to post them. I'm happy to look at the questions and discuss them. Let me just see how we're doing for time, because I think the ancient maps and the geography is working out rather well in terms of what we need to do. So there are questions. Some of these questions are going to require a little bit more time from me, and maybe not immediately, but I will respond to these questions via DMs and maybe through the posts that are coming up. So folks, I think that should give us enough academic and technical kind of a conversation that we should start developing on how our history is connected not only to our geography, but to the geography of the other countries. What was about our geography, our landmass, our terrain, our waters, our fertility, our equivalent of the Nile, the river Indus, our equivalent of the Euphrates and the Tigris for Mesopotamia was the river Indus. And the role that she's played in terms of mothering and nurturing so many different types of people. And as they've come through and they've dovetailed with us, millennia after millennia after millennia, just imagine what a beautiful cacophony of a genetic hybrid the Pakistani at different provinces is today. So the fact that we keep trying to fit into this, I'm from such and such province and I'm from such and such province, actually we all look so different to each other, and that is because of this genetic makeup, this melange of different types of people, all the way from the Baltic countries down to Greece, to Turkey, to Iran, and the other end to the Kushan Chinese, southern Russians. Imagine all the different typologies of genes, of chromosomes that are in Pakistan's nation today, amongst all of its millions of people. This is that diversity to be celebrated. This is that diversity to be written about, to be talked about, to be looked at in terms of our history as an overspill of all of these other regions' histories, of all of these other cultures, of all of this other music and food and fashion and jewelry and storytelling. I mean, all the history that is the ends of this octopus's tentacle connected to these different countries should be brought together. Should be brought together in this discussion, in this dialogue, in this discourse. And then we start talking about the Pakistaniyat. What is it? What is it Pakistani today? What is our true genetic makeup? What are we that's far richer and deeper and more worth celebrating than just the last 70 years of our history where we were labeled as Pakistan? Or before that we were part of India. There's still a lot more than even when we were part of India and part of Hindustan and part of Bharat. Much richer history. We are the gateway to the Orient. Bounded by the Himalayas, the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush, you have the two passes, the Khyber Pass and the Bolan Pass on this end, as the Kithra mountain range trail out to the water. We have the gorgeous oceans, the natural seaports, and we are the threshold that everybody has come to, either to access the hot water, the warm waters, or to access the rich Orient. They've all had to come through Pakistan. And that is what excites me so much about the work that we do in the edu-tours, the discussions that we have in our pop-up classrooms, at the forts, at the palaces, in the deserts. This is why we do what we do. This is why I do what I do. And this is why these conversations are going in the direction they are going in, thanks to all of you actually sharing this enthusiasm, sharing this excitement, sharing this curiosity and these questions with me to understand better who we are. So, on that note, I'm going to wind up for today, and thank you so much once again for sitting through this conversation with me. I will see you again in 3 days, which will be Monday at 4 o'clock for live session number 10. In the meantime, same as always, look after yourselves, stay safe, stay indoors, stay quarantined, stay locked down. Help us all save the world as we move into a new dimension, into transitioning into a new kind of paradigm where the old will just not make any sense anymore. On that note, thank you very much, and Khuda Hafiz.